without the power of God behind everything I do, I really am completely inadequate.
I'm helping the culture. These guys are part of us as well. You know, these guys are our cousin. I'm helping the culture. I'm pushing the culture forward in another way.
Hey, black child, be what you can be, learn what you must learn, do what you can do, and tomorrow.
What do you do after you read? What do you do after you know all, right? And you can say that you're truly conscious. How are you putting what you know into action?
Hey, what's up? I don't know what happened to that sound. I hope y'all can hear it on the other end, but y'all know my intro music is supposed to play and didn't play. But what's up, y'all? This is New Black History Maker Show. We are at the Good News Network live again. This is episode 9, and it is Women's History Month. So we're talking all things Black women. So for today, we are talking about HBCUs, PWIs, and Divine Nine. So that culture, the experiences there. Of course, you can see if you're watching on the Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube. I'm not by myself. We have some dope Black women in the building, so we're gonna get into introductions and stuff. But yeah, so we're talking about PWIs, HBCUs, and Divine Nine and our experiences with that, and just all that it encompasses and all of that. So I have Nia here, Kayla, and Danny. You guys can introduce yourselves. Say a little bit about what you do.
I'll go first. My name is Nia King. I'm a therapist. I have my own podcast called What's Good With You. And I'm also the owner of Kid Onyx, which is a brand for Black children to have emotional learning tools. And I went to the real HU. Went to Hampton University.
There we go.
I had to throw that in there. And I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Yes, Kayla.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Clark. I went to Howard University, the Mecca of Black Excellence.
Oh, okay.
The Mecca.
I love it already.
Class of 2019. I'm just a regular girl applying to nursing school right now, trying to figure life out. So, yeah.
Nice. Danny.
My name is Danny or Danielle. I am a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. I went to Cal State LA, so it's a PWI in the state of California. And I am a cake designer. So I design 3D cakes, and I also teach classes about cake for youth and adults.
Okay, dope. So I'm the one that went to the PWI and didn't pledge nothing. So I went to Concordia. I know I don't talk about college and stuff a lot, but went to Concordia and did not pledge, but you already know about what I do and all of that. So just to add that to the conversation. But so we're going to just check in. So if you guys have been watching the show, you know that I normally ask the generic, how are you doing? But then also I was reading an article and they were like, we should ask different questions outside of just how are you doing so that we can foster different answers. I think we've become so conditioned to say good after someone says, how are you doing? So when you start to ask different questions, it makes your mind thinking you don't have a question or an answer prepared already. So let's start off with how are you? And anybody can grab that.
I'm tired. I'm exhausted.
That's real.
I just started a new business and I thought it's just going to be fun. It's going to be
and
great.
Shout out to you. Yeah.
Thank you. But it's dang, you really got to work all the time, to see the results. Yeah. And I knew that, but it's when you start, that's when you realize it, dang, this is a lot of work. So, that on top of just working a full-time job and then also having my podcast, it gets exhausting. So I'm a little tired, not gonna lie. I'm not just gonna be like, oh, I'm good, I'm great.
Yeah.
No, I'm tired. I'm tired.
I love that. Anyone else?
I am I'm also tired and super busy. I was just talking to the ladies before we started. I have an upcoming 2-year-old, and so having her, and now she's in daycare full time, and circling back around to find myself and what it is that I'm doing, and getting more involved into my cake business has been tiresome and busy And now we live in a space where, everyone's an entrepreneur. So navigating through that and getting back on track has been, busy and tiresome.
Right.
Yeah.
Me, I just feel very overwhelmed right now because I'm applying to school. I'm trying to pay for a trip. I'm working a lot. So just feel like there's not enough time in the day
Right.
to really get done what I need to get done.
Right.
So I just feel overwhelmed. I feel like I have a lot on my plate right now, but I have to study for these tests I have to take to get into nursing school. So it's like all that. Meanwhile, I'm trying to navigate life and learn and grow. So I just feel overwhelmed, a little overwhelmed.
I feel that.
That's
Feel that.
good. I love the honest responses, and I'm on the same kind of tip. I'm okay. I'm good, but then also just in a place of like, it's a lot going on. And good stuff, because like you guys are all saying, we asked for these things, or, I think everyone spoke to an element of leveling up or doing something that's not, within our norm. So it's like, yeah, we asked for these things, but then you have to actually go and like carry these things out. And I think that's like the real like thing that you have to face. So the question, I think this is a perfect question that I want to ask is, how could you have showed yourself more grace this week?
That's so tough because I didn't start my week with, the word grace as a pioneer for it. My word for the week was hustle. Like, okay, every day I got to meet a goal or a quota or something. I mean, I could have did it nicely, I guess, but I was just trying to get it done. Like I have these goals to me. And so by any means, I've been graceful with my life for the last, couple years. And now it's time for me to get aggressive with what I want to do. So it's a tough question because I already had in my mind what it is I wanted to achieve for the week. So that was me.
I probably could have talked to myself a little bit better, like be a little bit more positive towards everything I have to do. I probably could be like, oh, well, you didn't do this today. So what are you doing? Like, why didn't you organize or be better with time management? So I probably could have talked to myself a little bit better and like, well, you got this done today, which is better than what you did yesterday or better than last week. So I probably could have shown myself a little bit more grace by being more positive.
Yeah. I would say for myself, it's kind of like last weekend, but sort of this week, like Sunday, like all I did was sleep because the week before I just had a really terrible week as far as like with my job. I just felt like a lot of people were on me with deadlines, and then one of my clients had a crisis, so I like felt responsible. Kind of makes me feel like I'm failing the client when they have a crisis or when they, go back into a deep depression. So that was weighing on my heart a lot that week. So that Sunday, I was just like, I'm sleeping. Like I'm gonna sleep all day. Like that's how I show myself grace. Because normally I'll be like, no, Nia, you can't sleep. You got to do this. You got to catch up on notes. You got to catch up on this.
Yeah.
But that Sunday, I was just like, I'm burnt out. Like I have to sleep. This is all I could do.
Yeah, that's real. And I think for myself, the grace piece. It's funny because I ask the questions and I don't think about them. Like, or I didn't think about. I'm like, I knew I was going to ask this question and didn't think about it beforehand. But I think just with everything going on, like with all that I have going on, sometimes it's just like, oh, you have to do more. You have to do more because you're looking at everybody else, and it's like, well, this person is doing this, but you don't know that that person may have rested all day on Sunday. So it's like not really comparing myself to other people and just kind of being like, this is my race, and I'm gonna run it the way that I'm gonna run it. So So I'll do one more question because we usually kind of have a little more time with like the intros for you guys. So it's, if you could describe where you are in your life right now with one sentence or one word, what would it be?
Sheesh.
Maybe I should start sending these questions out before.
I would say like metamorphosis. Like I'm changing, I'm realizing my full potential and not staying in that box, and I feel like I'm on the brink of like something big. So that's where I am.
That's interesting because I've been kind of describing my life not necessarily exactly like that, but I've just been like, who you meet or who you know right now is not going to be like, I'm not in my like, not final stages, but I'm not like in the final form of like what I'm going to be.
Right.
You know, I'm like,
Right.
I've been growing, the business has been growing, and a lot of things have been happening. And all of those things are great. But like, I feel like I'm in a very infant stage of like my adult life and like my potential and stuff. So it's like, if you meet me now, it's like, you can look up in 5 months and I'll look completely different, or I'll be in a completely different space.
Yeah.
So I kind of like really resonate with that too.
Nice. I think maybe I would have to say like on the rise. I think that when I think about that, that is like continuous growth, continuous like rising to the next element. And I am like yearning for that. Like that is like my vibe right now. Like I already have what I have and it was great, but how can I take it further? How can I go further?
Right.
So like I always try to keep that mentality of like going to the next step because I like comfortability and I know that. And so when it gets so comfortable and it feels so good, and you guys already know who I date, that becomes like
Right.
what are we doing right now?
It's like
So
comfortable.
it's comfortable. What are you doing? Like, I don't know, it feels good. So, you know, I understand like I love that. And if I yearn for these new things, I gotta change it up. So, you know, that's my vibe, that's my flow right now.
For me, I know it's very simple, but it's growth right now for me, especially spiritually. 'Cause I'm going through some stuff, and I feel like I'm definitely being stretched spiritually and in my life period. So it's definitely growth for me. I'm growing. I'm spiritually and mentally, physically, emotionally. I feel that growth coming, and so yeah, that's for me growth.
Yeah,
I like it.
it's so interesting. Well, because the last show that we had, I think it was the last show, but yeah, it was being a Black woman. So I think we talked about like having safe spaces, and it's funny because we have a certain topic that we're going to talk about today, but it's like as we're talking, I'm like, there's so many different things that we can, you know, dive into. But I think that happens when you're in a room with Black women, and we finally get to be in these spaces because we don't get it all the time, you know, especially in the workplace and but whatever we have going on, like it's not very common for us to just randomly be in a space with like Black women, you know? So that well, before we go into that, this is a space for a commercial. So we know some of you guys have been DMing us, and hopefully by next week's show we will have these slots filled, but it is open for anyone who has a business. If you do service-based stuff or whatever, we have slots for you. So DM us at New Black History Makers on Instagram and let us know if you want to secure one of these spots and sponsor one of our shows. Like I said, we're talking about HBCUs, PWIs, and Bond 9. So there's been a lot of conversation. I think anytime you say HBCUs versus PWIs, there has been a conversation that has existed since the inception of these institutions. So that's something that it's always interesting to me. And I think as I'm getting older, I've said to people, I think there's a real difference between those that were born, I'll say like on the East Coast or in the South, and those of us that are in California, because, you know, with social media, we're able to see like everybody, you know, so you have people doing these TikToks and reels where the aunt pledged and the grandma pledged and the mom and then the sisters. And it's like, dang, all y'all, like, I ain't got
family
nobody.
affair.
Right. Where you were raised or they had you saw those colors when you were a little girl, and that was like what you looked up to, you know. But I was like, being in California, I didn't have that, and I don't really know. I didn't.
0%.
My friend,
I didn't have it either. I didn't have it either.
Yeah, so it's like it's a different thing. So I've been more so talking about that on that, you know, piece because I'm like, you know, it's a real rich culture. You know, I feel like when your family or when you can say my parents went to HBCUs and that's why I went to Howard or I went to Clark or whatever, you know, like it's cool. So I'm like, yeah, let's have the conversation. I think it's different when you're talking about Black women and what Black women have experienced from them. You know, our experiences are not like monolithic, but we do share some experiences. So what you went to HBCU. Well, me and you went to school together.
Yeah,
for high school
together.
and then you and I went to school together for college. Yeah. So, what was your? So we went to GAR.
Right.
GAR was diverse in Cerritos.
Right.
And then to go to HBCU, I feel like that's a very interesting
transition.
So
It's
tell us about
completely
that.
different. I feel like ever since I saw like drumline when I was little, I was like, oh, I gotta go there.
Right.
Like, this is so cool. And I've never been in that environment where it's just all Black. Like, because growing up in Cerritos, like she said, it was very diverse. But I always knew that I wanted to go to a HBCU because I wanted to be a part of that. But yeah, it was different because I came from, a strict household. My dad's a preacher, and he was on me. Like, he wasn't really letting me go to parties, nothing, boys, like none of that. Maybe towards the end of high school he did. But anyway, I get to Hampton, and it's like, even just how the people treat you is just completely different. Like, it was so welcoming. Like, it's like a family. Like, oh, you don't know how to do this? I'm gonna help you. The teachers would be like, no, you did this wrong, baby. I'm gonna need you to go back, go to this room and get this. They were so welcoming.
Yeah.
And even just the camaraderie. It's just we're always together. Like, and the boys, what I'm saying? Like, I can't leave that part out. I think at GAR it was like a certain type of girl was praised. It was, the light-skinned girl with the weave and the nice little
Curly
bag
hair,
and
yeah.
curly hair.
Curly
Right. Yeah. So I wasn't really sought after at GAR. It was just like, oh, I'm just here. I was just average. But when I went to Hampton, it was just like, oh, I love your skin. You so chocolate. Da da da. I'm like, me? Like, oh, you're talking to me? I'm like, oh, like, people think I'm cute here? Like, my confidence just went up a lot when I went to Hampton. So it was. I could go on and on about Hampton, but I want them to answer it as well. But it was definitely, I loved it. I loved it. I loved the change. I definitely was happy about my decision to go to Hampton for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then your transition, because we went to West LA together. Yeah.
See, my experience was different because I transferred
Right.
to Howard. So even that in itself is a story because it was very hard. I'm out there by myself, flying across the country, don't know anybody. It's not like I started from 9th grade where they have like acceptance students week, and that's where you get to meet everybody. That's where you move in. So I transferred. I didn't know anybody. My family left, and I'm by myself. Thankfully, thank God, my first roommate, she was a transfer too. So she really helped me navigate. She really welcomed me in. And then when I started getting on campus and in my classrooms, I joined orgs. That's where I really felt like, okay, yeah, I could do this. Because I started meeting people that helped me navigate. Oh, financial aid, you go here. You go talk to this person. You need help, go talk to this person financially. Go talk to this professor. Go talk to this counselor. So going to Howard, it really like the people really welcoming what she said. I mean, very, very welcoming. Like, you have the support, you have the people behind you. You're not going to be by yourself at a HBCU ever.
Right.
Ever. You're always going to have a community at a HBCU. And what I really loved about Howard coming from LA, because LA here in California, they don't tell you about HBCUs. They only tell you about the UCs and the CSU system.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
So thank God I went on that HBCU tour in 2016, which really exposed me to HBCUs. And I toured Hampton, I toured Howard, I toured Spelman, CAU, NCAT. So I went to a lot. But that tour really opened my eyes, and I fell in love with Howard. I applied there, and I mean, that was the best experience. The best decision I made was leaving California and going to a HBCU, going to Howard.
Wow. Well, for myself, I went to high school in Hawthorne, so a big part of my community was Hispanic. And before that, I lived in Lenox, which was a big population of Hispanic people. When it got to high school, I actually applied to schools outside of California, and I got into Clark Atlanta. But I think at the end of that, I decided, man, that may be too far. I don't know if I want to go. And for myself, being exposed to a big Black community wasn't a priority because I had already survived not being around, a big Black community. So I didn't have a drive to like, let me go to HBCU. That's my thing. I was more about like, let me get an education and a degree, because I am first generation college. So, just going to college and getting a degree is like great for me. So I actually started at UC Merced, which was like Cal Town. Like, coming from California and going there is like high desert, nothing. You move into Palmdale, Lancaster kind of thing.
I've been to that campus before. Yeah, it's different.
It's like one road in, one road out, and that was it. And this is back I graduated high school in 2007. So this was 2007, and they hadn't even had a graduating class yet. So I was like, I'm out of here. Like, I got there first day and started applying to other schools, like to get out of there, because I'm like, this does not define me and what I want to do and what I think my college experience is. So the first school out of there was Cal State LA, and I went there, and that's a big commuter school. There's not a lot of people that stay there. There's the older population, at least when I was going there. So I did the same thing. I went there, I went home, and I had a young lady in my class who said, hey, we're having this thing. It was a black girl who ended up becoming my pro fight. And she was like, we're having this event, you should come out. And I'm like, why not? I always just leave and come back and just go to school. And I went there, and it was a totally different life. Like, these were the Black students on campus, and that was it. Like, they all stick together. We all stick together, but it was like such a small population, but everybody was great and welcoming. Even though you had a situation where there were different orgs there, everybody loved on each other. So I got really, really excited about that and going more and more to the meetings. And I ended up becoming, eventually a Zeta. But within that school dynamic, like the Black culture we had to create, the Black experience we had to create, the Black student union we had to create, because it didn't exist. It was like nothing there for Black students. Advisors would change every year. So we had to create like our Black experience, which, I'm grateful for, because seeing now what's going on, it is better. So I'm happy to be like a catalyst and a pioneer for that culture there. But I wouldn't change it. I don't know anything else. I would experience an HBCU, but I love what I did, and I don't have any takebacks for that,
Yeah.
And then as far as, because you guys both pledged, so what was that something that you were mindful of before you went to HBCU, or
0%?
Yeah, actually no,
0%.
because I didn't really. I mean, I have an aunt who's SG Row, but like she didn't really talk to me about it. I didn't really know what it meant, really. It all started at Hampton, and what I saw the Deltas on campus doing and what they were about and how they carried themselves. And that's when I was like, I'm interested in this. Like, I think I want to do this. But yeah, before, no. Like, no. I had no idea. Like, I really had no idea. But like you said, the culture is rich. Like, as far as, the grandma, the mom, the legacy, it's they don't play around. They don't play around. They take it like really seriously. Like, so yeah, it was different, but I liked Delta out of all the other ones because of what I saw them doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so was there, with you being from California, right, and not maybe being as privy to that like rich culture, was there some type of, like,
it was some stuff that I did, and they were like, you can't do that.
Right.
You can't say that. You can't post that. And I'm like, oh, why not? They're like, no, just don't do it. And you got to learn the culture like as you go. But if you're coming from California, we don't know anything about Greeks and the signs that they hold up, the sounds that they make. We don't know. So yeah, I learned fast. I learned fast when I was a freshman. Like, oh, you can't do. Okay, all right. Yeah. So.
And then with you, Danny, so with you going to school in California, were there women that were pledging that had that rich culture that were from like out of state, or was it a lot of just like California girls?
It was a lot of California people here. Now you do have people who are from California like yourself who go and pledge somewhere else and then they come back and they're still a part of your growing cycle because they embed themselves in other chapters that are here, grad chapters and things like that. But there's definitely a difference being pledging in the South and out here.
So I was gonna ask that too. Like, is that a thing? Like, is it like, are you a little more authentic over here? And
well, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated is a non-pledging Haitian organization. I just want to put that on the record real quick. Don't come for me. But there is a difference. Obviously, like she said, there's a lot of rich culture in the South, and it has kind of trickled down to us. So we have to make our experience ourselves. So if you're out here, you would notice that most Greeks are really close together, not even depending on the school. You know, obviously, I know Keith, he went to Northridge. That is, you know, over the hill for Cal State LA. But everyone is close connected because all we have is each other. You know, there's not, I know on TV you see like a bunch of like rivalries and things like that, which we have that for the purpose of, you know, entertainment when we're doing things on campus and stuff. But at the core of it all, we are all we have. You know, we all will go to the same advisor and we'll all seek the same people, and it's dependent on them. And the school system is not understanding the culture behind the NPHC. They don't get it out here at a PWI. So we have to take that into consideration, and it's really like playing their game to get what we want, you know?
And so we'll continue that piece of the conversation or ask more questions along that. But one thing that I know I've argued, even as someone who did not go to HBCU, that you'll have the conversation of like, oh, HBCUs don't prepare you for the real world.
That's false. Fake news.
So, and that's always my standpoint, where it's like, well, why do we feel like Black people can't prepare Black people for the real world? You know, so I know that y'all have probably had those conversations. I know your thoughts.
Well, I went to a PWI for grad school.
That's what I thought.
So I've had both experiences, and I mean, it's just false. Like, it's just false. I don't really know how to combat it, just other than it's false, because I feel like when I left to go to Hampton, I didn't even think I was that smart. Really, I had like a 2.8 GPA. Like, I was just, you know, praying that I got in to college. You know, I didn't have the greatest SAT scores, but when I went to Hampton, and it's like I got the support that I needed. I found what I wanted to work with. Like, you know, I wanted to work in psychology. I wanted to work with kids, and then like I graduated with like a 3.5. So it's like, it did an excellent job of preparing me, because if I didn't go to Hampton, I don't know if I would be here right now. You know, I don't know if I'd be a therapist and have a master's degree if I didn't go to Hampton. I feel like Hampton, when I say like Hampton instilled like that confidence in me, not just, you know, like my looks, but professionally and academically. And they really prepared us for like job interviews. I remember we used to have like, what's like the little, I had to dress up in like a black skirt suit with a white shirt. And if we weren't dressed like that, they would turn us around. They'd be like, no, you can't come in. Like, if we didn't have black, like the little kitten heels, they were like, no, you can't come in for the interviews. And I was just like, why are y'all so strict? But they are preparing us. And even to this day, when I first started my job here, I'm dressing up every day in business casual or business professional. They come in wearing like sandals and jeans. And I'm just like, why? You know, so I would say they prepared me in an excellent way. So that's just my experience. I mean,
you know, when people say that, I always wonder, what is it rooted in? Like, is it rooted in anti-Blackness, or is it where is that like, where is that coming from? Like, why? And I think people say that because at an HBCU, you're sitting in class with black students. So is our education not good enough because we're not sitting in the classroom with Caucasians and Asian students? Is that why you're saying that? Is their education just automatically better because, you know what I'm saying? So when people say that, I don't know. I just don't. I hate when people say that. But I definitely feel like Howard prepared me for the real world. I mean, they have taught me. I learned discipline at Howard. I learned professionalism at Howard. I learned networking at Howard. So I don't get why people say that. I mean, our vice president, regardless of how you feel about her, she went to Howard. So when people say that, our leaders, a lot of our leaders went to HBCUs. A lot of our pastors went to HBCUs. A lot of people in politics, business, on a news station, they went to HBCU. So when I don't understand why people say that at all.
Yeah, it's always an interesting topic, and sometimes you'll get people that, like, I've been in conversations where I was like the only one that's like no, and I'm like I think there was a conversation I was in, and one of the ladies had went to UCLA, and she had said something like, and I think we've been seeing it where like, oh, we had our own little like HBCU on campus, and I was like, well, what are the numbers of Black people? And she was like, with Black people, with Black students and Black staff, it was 2%, and I was like, that's virtually impossible for you to have a little HBCU on campus,
right?
And it's only 2%, including staff and students. But she was convinced that an HBCU wouldn't have been a better experience for her. And my question is always, well, why is it when it comes to Black, regardless of institutions, but even just Black things, that we don't look at them or hold them to a certain esteem? And I think it is important that a lot of our leaders, or a lot of the Black people that are in high positions, did come from HBCUs. I think that's like something to be noted, basically. But yeah, that's interesting. Did you want to touch on it a little bit, or?
Well, I just think it's rooted into this hate for the Black culture. People have always seen the Black community at a lower standard. Even thinking about what are we comparing it to, like what is it? Sports. HBCU colleges barely have gotten a position on TV to be shown their football games. And to some people, if you haven't taken your team to the championship, you're not a good school. And a lot of Black schools don't have that opportunity to do so because they don't have platforms given to them. And so I think historically it has just been like this mindset that has been taught to the next generation to have us like belittled and have us like a separate entity, that like we can't have a higher thinking, a higher purpose, a higher being. And it's becoming like a generational thing taught to the next generation. So I think that's really what it is. But on the contrary, I think we are starting to recognize these leaders that are in positions who have gone to HBCUs. And it's like, we have the proof right here. What more do you need? It's literally right here. And we're moving towards like pointing that out and making sure it's known, like, no, we here.
For sure.
Been here.
And you mentioned sports, so you guys are aware of like Deion Sanders and all that. Right? So I personally am like so glad, because I don't know if you guys watch I'm an Athlete, but they have a lot of conversations on that with like B. Marshall and Channing Crowder and Ocho Cinco. But they go back and forth about it, about, they are former NFL like star athletes, and they went to some of the biggest schools, in the nation, and they're now having these conversations like, well, would you do it again and go to a HBCU, or would you do it again and go? And Deion Sanders brought up the point, like, if you had an Ocho Cinco, and we all kind of know like Ocho Cinco is crazy, like he's kind of starting to mature a little bit more now, but he was like, if you had an Ocho, why would you not send him to Deion Sanders, like to help get him together? Like, how can these other, white coaches really groom Ocho Cinco? And he's like, well, what could we have seen from Ocho? What should he have been under a coach like Deion Sanders at a HBCU? So it makes me wonder. It makes me definitely grateful for like what Deion Sanders is doing and the way that he's like changing that culture, because it's been a night and day.
It's doing a lot for that culture. But also too, I think people forget that we don't have the funding that these white schools have.
That's what
if we had the millions and millions to do advertising and the broadcasting on CBS or NBC or whatever, maybe people would start going there. But we don't have that funding. I don't know where
Yeah.
it comes
and we
from.
never
But
did it in the first place.
right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, we always, I'm sorry,
No,
but
you
we
good.
always lack funding. I definitely think if we had the money for better facilities, if we had the money to pay coaches more, if we had the money, we will have these 5-star, 4-star recruits coming
Yeah.
to HBCUs. But I think it's also a slippery slope because if we have the stars, the money comes in.
Mhm.
If we have the money, the stars come.
Yeah.
So now it's like, well, how
Yeah.
do we figure out how to
Yeah.
navigate this? Where do we get the money from, and how do
Right.
we get them here? How
Yeah.
do we better our facilities? You know
Right.
what I'm saying? How do we get better equipment so
Mhm.
they can come?
Mhm.
But yeah, and also it's just exposure, like she said, like getting us on TV. Like we have great coaches, we have great teams, we
Yeah.
have great sports. It's just we need the exposure.
Right.
The PWIs have always had the exposures. We haven't.
Mhm.
We haven't. So
Yeah.
that's what it is.
And I think that funding goes back to when you have to look at who funds these white institutions. And
Mhm.
a lot of times you do have where it's donors or it's a lot of the alumni and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have to look at the black community. And usually, I think also on I'm Athlete, I clearly love that show, but they were saying with the black or a lot of the black players that probably came from nothing, like once they get money, they were like, where does your money go? And they were
Mhm.
like, our money goes back into the hood, back into our parents, and we take care of our mothers and stuff. But if you're a rich kid, your money goes forward. So they were like, as a
Uh-huh.
community,
Mhm.
we don't have, even if you do have a lot of money, like
Yeah.
when you're thinking about you're this individual, you're the only person in your family that made it out, all that you have to take care of behind you, when someone that, you know, was maybe more financially like affluent, they're
Mhm.
able to just give money into certain spaces. And I think that's something to look at, because I think with the funding, a lot of times people shame the HBCU for not having funding. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, it's, you know, it's a lot bigger than just the institution not having
Right.
money, but because the PWI wouldn't have money if it wasn't for the donors either.
Yeah.
So it's like on
Yeah.
a bigger, you know, scale. So there's a
Yeah.
lot more
Yeah.
that needs to
Yeah.
be looked at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the thing too. I know that you guys see this where I mean, you guys have to speak to it, but where you have people that are giving, but they give to the same schools.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So is that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the big three.
Are you talking about
Mm.
Jeff Bezos' ex-wife that was giving out
Well,
the 20
just-
million to different?
I mean, just in general, I have people say that. Just
Mhm.
it's the big three: Howard, Spelman, Morehouse.
Mhm.
Anybody else, they got to fight. They fighting for their lives.
Right.
Hampton
So-
got some money too. I
Yeah,
just
they do.
Like, don't leave that out.
don't leave that out. Like, we gotta talk for it, you know.
No, you're right. But yeah, I have seen that about, oh, well, what about the other HBCUs? What about Bennett? You know, and what about FAMU? And what about Bethune-Cookman? What about the
Right.
smaller schools that really do need the money? And
Yeah.
it's crazy because they see us getting these we get a lot of donations, I will say that, Howard, but we still need the money. Like we aren't
right.
as rich as, like, we have housing problems. We need money for housing.
They got mold in their dorms. Yeah.
Hey,
What?
Just saying.
They got mold in their
But
dorms.
yeah, like
The
our
mold.
facilities, like, you know, and we need that money. We have medical school, we have law school, we have a theological school. So we have different school, we have different campuses that all need money. So
Yeah.
dispersing that money to everybody that needs it is, we need that money. I don't understand. Yeah, we need that money. So,
So donate to HBCUs, basically.
please,
all of them.
please, help us.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I was watching an interview about HBCUs and PWIs, and a question came up where, I don't know if it was a question or a statement, but the lady basically was just like, she hopes that at some point we can not have HBCUs.
What?
And so she was saying that from the perspective of, we have HBCUs because the PWIs don't treat us correctly.
Mhm.
So she was saying, in a perfect world, wouldn't you argue that we should not, like, HBCUs should be basically like not waved out, but they should fizzle out because the PWIs begin to treat Black people better or whatever. So what would be your response? Or Danny, if you want to grab that too.
So I can understand to an extent, like sometimes separating ourselves is not the best choice. Even though from our perspective, we want to celebrate our culture, sometimes separating is not the best choice. So I can get that. However, we've never felt that kind of praise. So why not have something of our own?
Right.
You know, so that's not being understood after these years and years and 400 years of struggle, and not to mention segregation didn't end that long ago. Like my grandma and mom was around and stuff, you know, so we want to have something of our own because at some point we feel like we can't trust y'all. So we got to have something like a backup plan or something like that. But I can understand to a certain extent how separating ourselves could be damaging, you know.
Well, you got to talk about that a little more. It could be separating black and white, or
yes, I think sometimes isolating. I'm trying to think of an example of I don't know, like isolation for myself is not always the answer. Sometimes I need to know what it is that you're doing so I can bank off that and make it better. But separating myself or excluding myself from something is not going to help me progress faster in my head. I don't know. I don't think separation is always the answer. And this is also me not going to a school that is so culturally rich on myself. You know, I have to create that for myself. So I'm operating off the idea that whatever I want, I have to create. It's not going to be, you know, there for me. So just take that into consideration when I'm saying, like, you know, I don't think separation is always the best answer, because I feel like I made it without separating myself, you know. So that's just it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. But I do feel like we didn't really create that separation either. They did. So when we weren't welcome, HBCUs were there.
What a thing,
That was our only option, because we weren't allowed into their schools. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So for people to say, "Oh, we should get rid of HBCUs," well, I don't want to get rid of something that was created for us, because I just feel like, why every time something that's created for minorities, especially black people, all of a sudden they don't want it anymore. Yeah. They want it to fizzle out. They want us, all of a sudden now you want us to join your schools. You want us to go to your schools. Yeah. Why can't we just stay where we're at, where we're celebrated? And for people that, you know, for black people that's went to PWIs their whole life, HBCUs are where they find themselves. HBCUs are where they grow. HBCUs are where they learn to be comfortable in their blackness. So I will never get rid of HBCU ever. But I understand where you're coming from too. I understand. I get it. Separation. I think going to PWIs could help the harmony and kind of the hostility in this country, but HBCUs
I mean,
are where,
because black people been going to PWIs for a long time.
Yeah, they've been there and it's still not right.
That is true.
We hear y'all.
That is true. That is true. But yeah, I know. HBCUs, I need them to stay. They need to be here.
Yeah, I need them
for
to
our
stay.
young ones. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. And just, I think people get it confused. Like, just because I go to all black school, that doesn't mean I don't like white people.
Exactly.
Okay. Being pro-black does not mean anti-white. So that's what people need to, you know, stop equating those two. But HBCUs, it's almost like historical, like it's a part of history. Like, I get to be a part of history by going to Hampton University. Like, that just gives me a boost in confidence. And I've had both experiences. I think we should just not, you know, pressure people to go either way.
Yeah.
What experience do you want to have in college? If that's at USC, go to USC.
Yeah.
If that's at Hampton, go to Hampton. So I don't think we should try to force people to like HBCUs, like the people who want to be there are going to be there. The people who don't, they not. So I just, you know, I try not to, you know, force people and say, like, you need to go to an HBCU.
Yeah.
You do what's best for you. And I'm going to do what's best for me. What's best for me was going to Hampton University.
Right. And it's interesting too, because I question, like, the responsibility that we have as, like, this older generation to the younger generation, and like on how real are we going to be with them about, like, what may be going. Because I know, well, I haven't really talked about my experience, but I know for me going to a PWI and the stuff that I experienced there, I was like, oh no, like, I'm good. Like, yeah, y'all can have that. But it was just, I played basketball, so that was my, like, driving force. And then it was also, I had transferred too, so I came from a a junior college, but going to a PWI, and I went to a Lutheran school, so I was dealing with like, those white evangelicals, like, so that was a whole different space from like they weren't even progressive. Those were like, and I was there during Trump's first election, so that like walking out of my dorm the day after he got elected into office, it was like. It was just like a weird environment, it was a weird shift. And then like we started the BSU there and did all of that work, but it was just like, now that I'm older, I wouldn't want for a Black 20-year-old or 18-year-old to feel like the weight of the world or the weight of the Black experience is on their shoulders at this PWI. Right. So it's like, what responsibility do we have to be real with the younger generation? Because I know I was listening to something too, and a Black man, he went to a PWI. He used to be like pro that, and then he said for his kids, he was like, I'm not paying for them to go to white institutions. He was like, if you want to go to the Yales, if you want to go to any, or Cal, whatever, he was like, you get the scholarship and you go. He was like, I'll pay for you to go to HBCU, but I'm not paying for you to go to PWI. And I was like, I liked that perspective. Like, my money will go to a Black institution. But it, like you said, it's also, well, is that the best thing for the individual?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because I do hear a lot of Black people say, oh, I would have went to HBCU, but the PWI offered me more money. So, they needed the money, especially when you're talking about lower income Black students. And coming from poor families that, they need that money.
Yeah.
So if they're offered a scholarship at a PWI, I will never tell them, oh, don't go there. Come to Howard where you paying $46,000 in a year. No, go where where you can get an education, and especially if it's free, like you do it, like she said, do what's best for you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
I think, that's good. So back on the sorority. So I know that there's a whole lot of conversations around like, okay, when you are a part of it and the opportunities that you get. So has that been something that you guys have experienced, where the networking piece and just getting or having access to certain things that you may not have had access to?
100%. I think for myself, that has been like one of the greater aspects, networking. I mean, I've traveled to different states not knowing anyone there, hit up sorority sisters, and boom, I have a whole agenda. I have somewhere to stay. I have somewhere to go. And talking to them is like I know them. So and that's just on a social level. When it comes to business and entrepreneurship, I know people who work, high up in these corporate jobs who need, for myself personally, like catering service. That works for me, so and those would not have come specifically from those people if I didn't go through the experience that I didn't have. And especially over on this side, being at a PWI and having to have that Black culture be created and hold on to that, like we love on each other. So when somebody is in need, it's like, hey, you're jumping to that. So I think networking has been like a great source for myself. Yeah.
I would agree. The business that I just started, Kid Onyx, my line sister designed everything. And it was just like a no-brainer to me. When I had the idea, I said, I'm gonna call my line sister Joyce. She knows how to do this, and she executed it like perfectly. And that Delta brought us together. And not so much, I wouldn't say like networking has been more of a Hampton thing. I feel like just being a part of Hampton University has helped me as far as the networking. But definitely I see a lot of entrepreneurs and businesswomen that are Deltas, and it inspires me. It's like, okay, if she could do that, I can do that. And I didn't have that confidence coming out of high school. I didn't, that like me thinking to my like senior year of high school, I would not have thought where I am. Like I would be where I am. Or I could start my own business. Or I could be a therapist. I'll have a master's degree. What? No, I never thought that. But it's like seeing the other Deltas, like I think one of my profiles is a dentist that has her own practice. And one of my profiles is a VP at Morgan and Chase. And I was just like, dang, like this is powerful.
Yeah.
for a young Black girl to see this, it's like,
Mhm.
wow, like it's just powerful. I think that was the biggest impact on me. I mean, definitely I feel like the networking, as far as like you're never really alone, no matter like what state you're in. Like you could
Yeah.
find a
Yeah.
Delta or a
Yep.
Delta that know a Delta.
True.
Oh yeah, my soror live over here and she can help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always a perk. Yeah, definitely.
Right. And, and I think I'm always, well, not always, but I think my looking from the outside looking in, it's always, my question has always been like, or my desire has always been like the way that you guys feel in your certain, groups. Like, okay, so then why can't that exist solely across the board for Black women? Where this is something where you didn't have to have pledged into something, or you didn't have to have said that I'm part of this group to do something. But if you are a certain kind of Black woman and you do a certain thing, like, why couldn't that be a point of access? Or why can't I have points of access, within certain groups?
Yeah.
And it's not, of course, just with the women. That's a question that I have for the men too. But it's an interesting thing being on the outside, because it's like, okay, if I'm sitting here and then you have a Delta here, and the person that we're interviewing with, or the opportunity, they're a Delta, and I'm a Black woman and this is a Black woman. So do they automatically get the, the X, Y, and Z or whatever because of that? Or do you still consider both sides, So I think from the outside, that's always my perspective. Like, I know I'm some heat, so you put me next to somebody, you don't have to think about it. But if they're a Delta and you a Delta, you gonna pick them, like, So that's just on the outside. It's like, it makes you think. But I've always wanted, because I've heard, all the stories.
Yeah.
But always wanted that to just exist with Black women, period. So.
I mean, I agree with you. Like, I wish that could exist across the board with all Black women. And I don't think that it's like an intentional, like, oh, she's not as good as me because she's not a Delta. Like, it's not an intentional.
Yeah.
It's just that we love on each other so much that we're just like, oh my God, soror. Yes, I love, oh my God, I love this. It's just a natural thing that I guess we learned from the process, that we just love on each other. And I get what you're saying, though, like we should love on all Black women, but it somehow is embedded into us that that's what we're supposed to do. But I never would look down upon or not give another woman the opportunity if she's the more qualified one, you know, or like, say, if I knew a Delta that had a podcast, but then I knew you that had a podcast, it's like, well, I know Jasmine, her podcast is better. You know what I'm saying? Like, she knows more about podcasting. And so that's who I contacted when I wanted to start a podcast. You get what I'm saying? So I never let that get in the way of knowing, like, who's the best fit for, whatever it
Definitely
is.
situational.
Yeah.
But it is something that you learn, to continuously love on your sisters, regardless of if you personally met them or it's the first time you met them. However, I think it would have to be a mental shift for Black women in general to decide that we're going to love on each other, because we haven't done it. It's not a learned behavior. It's something that we have to start intentionally doing first, and then the habit will come. But I mean, for growing up, the love on your Black sister was there, but it wasn't like the forefront of the woman's movement for my mom's generation, for their generation. It was like, let's get outside, the crack epidemic, and let's move forward outside of that. So I think the progression of Black women loving on each other has to be something that is intentional first before it happens completely in unintentional. Yeah.
Did you have something, Kayla?
I'm not in the sorority, but I understand where you come from about, like, what about me? What about it? But I think you have to think about why these orgs were created too. So I think, they were created like to have that group of people where you could be like, hey, like, I'm gonna support you, I'm here for you, and whatever you need. So I don't think it's intentional to leave out other people that aren't in the org, but the reason why they were created so that they can love on each other and really like support and be there for each other, especially on PWI's campuses. Like HBCUs, you can find your home in any org. You don't have to join, but PWIs is different. Like they really needed that home feeling, that support.
Right.
especially during the times when some of them were created.
Right.
These awards were kind of they were like two generations, three generation removed from slavery.
Right.
So you're talking about these students that are on PWI campuses. They needed that group of people to support so they can make it through school. So I get what you're talking
Definitely
about.
the foundation.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And
I didn't even think of that. Like, that's a good point.
Yeah. It makes me, and not even to be like the devil's advocate, but it makes me wonder, because if, you know, it's Black women that are part of these groups. So that means that we as Black women are capable of doing this, you know, like, period, regardless of what there is. So I think it's a thing for community and for us as Black women to be more mindful of, you know, and just to, you know, try to operate in that and realize, like, you know, we do have that ability to love on each other or to support each other or to, like, collaborate with each other or whatever, regardless of, you know, wherever you come, if you from here or from there or whatever. So, but Kayla, did you want to pledge, or
I thought about it when I was there, especially at Howard. You know, it's a huge thing. I think 5 out of the 9 are alpha chapters at Howard. So you know, it's huge. And I thought about it, and but I was so focused on graduating, I was like, nah. And by the time I did become interested, it was my senior year, and I was like, it's probably too late for me to try it. Maybe I'll do a grad chapter.
I pledged my senior year.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
I pledged my senior.
Wow. See, I was just so focused.
I never gave up. I was like, no,
you got to explain that. So what's the typical year? Is your junior year or sophomore?
Well, it can be you can be a freshman, but second semester you have to have like grades first.
It depends on the school, because at Hampton you had to be a sophomore. You can't. There's no freshman pledging. So you had to be a sophomore. But I think Delta was on moratorium for the first couple of years I was there. That means like they weren't bringing in nobody because it was like, you know, some things going on.
The AKAs at our school are banned because someone passed away. It was a big story. She drowned at the beach.
I kind of remember that story
a while ago. So
it was a hazing incident.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they are not allowed back on the campus of Cal State LA.
But, and do they get an opportunity to come back at some point?
I don't know what their restrictions are. Sometimes they do like 10-year bans, 15-year bans. But for them, someone dying, they may, and it being a PWI, they may be like, nah.
Yeah.
Like, they don't understand the culture. You're not coming back no more, whatever kind of thing. So as far as I know, they aren't there. And when I was in school, they aren't there. And it's 10 years later. So yeah.
Yeah. And for Delta, I believe it was nationwide. Like they wasn't accepting nobody like for a couple years.
At no school?
Like at no school.
Oh
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Cause
some
you know,
stuff going
some
on.
stuff went down. They were investigating it, and they were like, we need to rethink on how we, you know, bring these ladies in. Cause so they wasn't having any lines. And then my junior year, they had a line.
Because it's a process.
Right. And then my senior year, they had a line on. I was on it, you know? So I was just like, I don't want to give up because it was like really important to me. So yeah, literally my second semester of my senior year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
and then how often are the opportunities? It's just annually or?
Annually, usually. Some people take like 2-year break, 3-year breaks. It just depends on who's in that chapter and who could bring in a new line. Because sometimes everybody graduates and then it's like, we can't bring in nobody. We don't have nobody.
Stipulations.
Right.
Even within the school, they'll say you have to have a certain amount of members to bring in more members.
Right.
And then your organization has their own set of rules as well. So the game is to not really let your chapter die out because you won't have to get in those situations. But I'm not sure about at a HBCU, but at a PWI, it gets tough because you ain't always, you know, people don't know. They watch a movie and they know about that and they think it only exists in the South, but over here it exists too. So you just don't want your chapter to die out. So you continuously try to do events and bring in people. And depending on the school, I know for Cal State LA, you can come in spring, summer, winter, fall, whatever. As long as you have enough people and they go through the right things that they need to.
And then I know you mentioned like the school having some type of say over the sorority or whatever you guys are pledging. So how does that work? If it's a PWI and they just have like certain guidelines that the
So
sorority operates
everyone has their own advisor, and then there's like a core advisor that everyone kind of communicates with. Everyone across the board has the same stipulations. It's not just the NPHC has this, and then the other Greek fraternities have this. Everyone across the board, you have to have a certain amount of members. You have to have a certain GPA. You have to have, you have to go to certain meetings, because at the beginning of the year, the middle and the end, you have to do like organization, like rules and things you can't do. So everyone has to do the same things, but we aren't getting, 15 people for rush week. And so it's just a little different.
Yeah, but the school can determine if you're active on the yard. So if it's a fight or something like that, they could take you off the yard for however long they want to.
And explain the yard.
So the yard is basically like where all the sororities and fraternities are. Like, it's not like a physical place per se.
It's like
Like your
school.
presence
Right,
is
the
there.
school. Yeah, like when I first came to Hampton, I'm trying to think, like there were no Sigmas on the yard. So there were just no Sigmas at all. But they came back like I think my senior year or something like that. But I think they got taken off the yard again for fighting. So they couldn't bring another line in until they, I don't want to say did their time, because it sounds like they're in jail, but the school has the power. If you don't follow, like she said, those guidelines, those stipulations that they have, if you don't follow those, and the dean of students feels like this is a problem, they'll just take you, off the yard, and there will be no Sigmas or no Deltas, no nothing.
And the school can do it, or your organization can do it. The school can say, yeah, it's okay, you can bring, and your organization be like, nah, y'all need a break.
Right.
Y'all need to sit down.
Yeah, you have to get approved to have a line, like whenever you
have to send paperwork, you have to send money, you have to send everything, and that takes weeks. Weeks, like you'll be around for weeks.
Right. Yeah. And then how have y'all's relationships been with like some of the older women or that are in your, well, I don't know if the word is chapters.
Grad chapter versus undergrad chapter.
Well, no, just the older women that maybe pledged like
like our pro fights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was a little intimidated at first, because I feel like I don't want to say they shamed the younger sorors, but it's like sometimes I feel like they're like, oh, y'all didn't go through what we went through. Sometimes that you get some people, I won't say that all the older sorors are that way, but sometimes you get that. So I was a little intimidated at first, but now I'm just like, hey, like, now that I'm out of college, it's just like it's not as big of a deal to me. But definitely at first I used to be kind of intimidated, like, let me make sure I'm on my P's and Q's, So
because they'll be on your head. The old ladies be on your head, I tell you, because you also have to recognize like the difference in time. Like some of them, for myself, because I came in a long time ago, some of them, it was legal to pledge. Now we're in a place where it's not legal to pledge. So they feel like their experience was harder. Like they went hard.
So when you say it was legal.
So pledging and hazing is illegal. Like you can't force someone to do things that they do not want to do. Okay. So beforehand, they can do that. Like you'll see old school pictures of them walking around with,
bricks in their hand or something
and carrying something or running here, going there. You can't do that anymore.
Right. Like School Days. You ever seen School Days? Yeah. Like
that was okay.
Right. That was okay then, but you can't do that.
You can't do that now. Yeah. And so that aspect of it has older people feeling like they did way more already. And then also like they're really into bylaws and doing things right, and parliament procedure and tradition. And when you're young, the biggest aspect is not only that you can do work, but you can have fun too. And so for them, it's a lot of work. Like, what's the work that you're doing? What's the work that you're doing? So there's always that kind of conflict of, well, these are young girls and you're older, so
Yeah.
they want a balance of the work being done in the organization, and that could be like a battle sometimes. So
I see that. And it's interesting too, because we talked about that last week. I think that it's something that exists across like all of our experiences with Black women, where it's in the workplace or at church or whatever, where you do have like the older generation that looks at us like, oh, well, the millennials, y'all know what y'all talking about, or y'all do this, or I think maybe you could experience that with being a mother, where they're just like, well, you guys are not doing it the right way or whatever. Because do you guys watch Bel Air?
I haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
I watch it.
You watch it?
Yeah.
So
She said, yeah.
well, there's without giving like a, giving away the show, but there's an interesting like nuance between Aunt Viv and Hillary, where it's the old generation versus the new generation kind of thing. So we talked about that. So it's interesting for you guys to bring it up in this setting too. But yeah, that was a good conversation. Good talk about these sororities and stuff.
We're good people. Good people.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think for myself, like I would want for little Black girls to experience it. Like it wasn't something that I think I would have, said yeah to or whatever, or like I didn't choose a HBCU, but I think that is important for the little Black girls coming up.
Right.
For them to, if they do go to a PWI, at least have some aspect of Blackness that you can lean into or be able to have that opportunity. So I hope that we here in California can start to normalize those conversations on like, just Black things, like it's okay to, and put yourself into a Black situation or whatever.
I agree.
Yeah.
100%. Even though I went to a PWI, like I felt exactly like you mentioned a little bit earlier, I would want my child to go and be embedded in the Black culture. Like I feel like I didn't grow up in that, and a part of my upbringing was my mom trying to get us away. Like I lived in LA, like hood LA when I was younger. Vermont and 75th, if you know anything, like South LA. Right. And so my mom wanted a better life for us. So she moved us out of there so we didn't have to deal with that. So I don't think I experienced a lot outside of my family, like true Black culture. So for my offspring and my children, I would want them to be in tune with that, because we've come from a place where we are hated, and I want you, like, I love Black love. I love Black people. Really, I love everything Black. I wear Black. I wear it. and so I want that to be the standard for them, because now we're dealing with mental issues of feeling a certain way and treating a certain way and navigating through life. And so she's going to have her own experience, but I would want, like, knowing that you're Black and having that Black power and that you are the greatest gift to be embedded in her from a child. So I'm all for it.
Hampton definitely was that for me. Like you're beautiful, you're this, you're capable of this, like you can do anything. I did not feel that way at Gar High School. I'm sorry. Like it just it never even crossed my mind. So I am thankful for Hampton because of that. And even like my little brother goes to Howard, and I just see how he's changed and growing into a man, and he's about to be an engineer, and it's just like, wow. Like I remember he was born, like, and now like he's just like so proud of his culture and just knowing a lot more. We even like teach our parents stuff. And that's, I'll be like, Mom, you didn't know about this? Like, how did you not know? But HBCU is like, it's embedded. It's embedded in us.
That it was something you mentioned, but about going to GAR. And I think some of these institutions or schools that we did go to, like GAR wasn't the place, like they didn't know to teach Black girls to love their Blackness, and because there were so many different like things going on, we had teachers, and when you think about it, like I'm always pushing, like LUSD has a program that allows for Spanish speaking students to learn the curriculum through someone that's speaking Spanish now. So we prioritize their culture when it's that, but because we as Black people don't have language barriers, we don't prioritize our culture and look at it the same way. And it's like language is a cultural barrier, there's other cultural barriers that may not be language, but they still matter. So I'm
Right.
like, Black students need Black teachers, and there's statistics that prove that. I think if you had one Black teacher before the third grade, you're like at a 15% chance higher of going into college. And if you've had two, the numbers double.
Wow.
So, but it's like they have these numbers and they know that, and then they say, well, why aren't Black kids doing well in school? And it's like, well, because you're not making changes to the the school system. So I'm always of the thought of like, what would that do? Because maybe that's a question that when was your first Black teacher? Like, when did you
5th grade.
have that? 5th grade.
Miss Charles. I'm still friends with her on Facebook. I love Miss Charles. Yeah.
And that was in one of the Cerritos schools?
That was in Norwalk.
Okay.
Yeah, in Norwalk. It's close to Cerritos. Yeah.
Okay. How about y'all? First Black teacher.
I think mine was 6th grade, maybe. Yeah, it was 6th grade. Middle school.
Actually, kindergarten. My mom just sent me a picture of graduating and my teacher giving me like, but it was kindergarten. But I was also in South LA with a big Black community. So, you know, the likelihood of me not getting a Black teacher was high.
Yeah, mine was 7th grade. So I had a Black English teacher. But I think about like all of the years that I didn't have that. And it's like that you did not have that representation or whatever, or someone that really understood you.
Yeah.
You know, so I remember when I would get my hair pressed when I was younger, and like my teachers would tell my dad, like, every time she comes in here with her hair like that, she just talks all the time. But it's like a Black teacher would have probably been like, girl, you think you cute, huh? You know, like, and would have been able to point. So like, you know, my dad, he dealt with it the right way. He was like, well, if she's getting a grade, she can kind of talk or whatever. But there's parents who would probably shut their kid down, you know. But it's like, think of what that would have done for my 5-year-old. I'm thinking my hair is cute, and my teacher affirms me, right? And then says like, I know you think you're cute, but let's, you know, tone it down. That's a different conversation than you just talking too much. You think like, you know, whatever, and not really understanding how we feel when we get our hair done, you know. So I really want for like our younger generation to experience like Blackness, you know.
And I think for that generation as well, it's going to come through social media. So we have a 9-year-old as well. So she's living in a generation of YouTube and things of that nature. So, you know, there has been some times where she wants her hair to look like the girl on YouTube and not understanding why is that happening. So we obviously see that's a cycle. It's just moved over to social media and we got it in a different way. But just like affirming her at a young age, like, you know, you're different, but your hair is still beautiful. It's curlier, it's bigger. People wish they had hair that looked like yours, you know, but we can see that same kind of cycle going on just in a different way with who they're hiring to be big on YouTube or social media or things like that. It's all these, you know, white people, even on TikTok. I'm not too big on TikTok, but I know like there's a big thing about stealing dances from Black people and then calling it their own, like Black creators. So obviously we still have a problem going on that we have to change, but it's just it sucks that we're still dealing with the hair situation and now I can see, you know, my daughter dealing with the hair situation, and it's like, all right.
Yeah, I remember having those times too where like they'd be like, why is your hair like that? Why did your hair get poofy like that?
Right.
You know, why didn't your hair stay straight? Oh yeah.
Did it grow overnight?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, oh, you cut your hair?
Right.
Yeah, all that.
Right.
All
yeah,
that.
it's a lot. So we're gonna wrap up, but I wanna leave with a question of like, what if you could wrap it up, like what did you guys take away from your experiences? So whether it be the sororities or the PWI, the HBCUs, but like that college experience and now being like women that are operating in your fields and you graduated, like what are the things that you carry from those experiences?
I think for myself, like again, going to a PWI and creating that Black culture, I think it has made me love on my Black people even more, because I saw how little we were in such a big entity, and we're bigger than that, and we're greater than that, and we're grander than that. And so I think my whole experience and even joining a Black sorority has made me like want to yearn for Black culture even more and love on my Black people, because that is something my family did within themselves, but people outside of that, like my family is bigger than my core family. Like all these Black people are my family, you know, and I represent all of them. They represent me. So just loving it and pulling my culture to a higher level. If that means me showing another person, like, my name is not Bon Kui, and you can talk to me regular and you don't have to do all that. Like, I am going to be a representative for a good Black community. So I've learned that throughout my college experience and going to, you know, the college that I went to.
You want me to go? Okay. Well, I just, when I think about Hampton, I'm just thankful, like just gratitude, like just thankful for the whole experience. And I feel like I'm never alone. Like my closest friends today went to Hampton with me. My roommate that I live with today, we met freshman year at Hampton. So it's just like those memories are irreplaceable. And I'm just in a place of thankfulness, and also it's like not confidence in the sense of like cockiness, but just like taking pride in what you do. That's what I took away from Hampton, like taking pride in what you do and not doubting yourself, like, oh well, maybe I can't do it because I don't have the money, or I don't. Just do it, just start it, man. You see these other people doing the things that you want to do that went to the same school as you could do it. And so I don't know if I would have had that going to a PWI. I don't know. But I do know that that confidence that I got from my HBCU allowed me to hold my own at a PWI, getting my master's from PWI. I never doubted myself because that confidence and that pride that I got at Hampton, it never left me. So that's how I feel about Hampton. I love Hampton. I'm always going to say great things about HBCUs.
For me, it's just everything that you said is true. It's really is a blessing to go to HBCU. I mean, just the diversity that you see at HBCUs. You know, we're not all the same. We're not a monolith. We're all different. We all like different
Very
music.
different.
We all dress different. A Black person from New York is not the same as a Black person from California or Jamaica or Africa. So just that diversity that I got to see at Howard was like, wow, like we are really amazing. We have an amazing culture. We are really an amazing people. And, you know, Howard really taught me, like, you can go in this world and do whatever you want to do. You know, you can sit at whatever table you want to sit at. You can walk into any room that you want to walk to, and keep your head high, because you deserve to be there. Like, your skin doesn't prevent you from doing anything. And if they won't let you sit there, then create your own table. Like how you created your own businesses. You have your podcast. You have, you know, so that's what I really learned, that discipline, that work ethic, that confidence, like you said, they really established that confidence in me. Like there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to do whatever you want to do. You could sit at the table with whoever you want to sit at. Caucasian, Asian, Black, it don't matter. Men, women, doesn't matter. Wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do, whatever heights you want to reach, you can reach it. So that's what I take away. Like boom, mic drop. Good things will only come out of my mouth about Howard and HBCUs in general. I am an HBCU advocate. If you don't want to go to Howard or Spelman, you could go to Bethune. They're all great. They are all great.
I got another one for you.
There's 104. You could pick one. So
That's
so
yeah. I wish I had something good to say about my school, but I don't have anything good to say about it. What I will take away is I don't talk about it enough, but I went to a school. They ended up I was on scholarship. They kicked me off the team, but I was allowed to keep my scholarship. So they basically wasted $80,000 on me because of like some mess with the coaches. I had went to go talk to the athletic director about some issues of like racism with the coach, and he went to go tell her that I said them. So she was like, oh, we feel like we can't trust you. And they tried to basically get me to act a negative way so that I would be able to lose my scholarship. And then after like 2 weeks of me just going through ups and downs with them, they were just like, you can keep your scholarship, but we just don't want you on the team.
Cool.
So yeah, that was a thing. And it was crazy, like going through that, but it really taught me. The coach ended up getting fired at the end of the season. So that, like, in retrospect, it taught me, like, yo, you don't ever sit on what you have to say. Like, always use your voice. Like, it doesn't matter if you lose the opportunity at the end, but like, I know that another Black girl wasn't going to come into that program the next year and experience what I experienced. So that was my takeaway from the PWI.
Speak up.
But yeah, so shout out to HBCUs and stuff. I think they are amazing and they're great. I love the culture. Like, that's one thing that I'm like, I don't really say that, like, I wish I would have done X, Y, and Z. I would wonder how it would have felt to have that culture, like we said earlier, where my family, you know, spoke about HBCUs and like pledging and all of that. I think that's a very like rich culture. And I think it's good for our community and stuff. I think it'll be good I think we see a lot of different things in LA. Yeah. I think LA would change for the better, like, especially, you know, in the like inner city. Yeah. If we were having a little more conversations about like what Black is like on the other side, you know?
Yeah. See, that's why we got you, girl.
Right.
Starting the movement.
Right.
Right. But yeah, so thank y'all. Drop your Instagrams and your businesses and all of that. I know you guys have a lot going on, so let us know.
Nia Queen is my Instagram. What's Good With You? Well, _ What's Good With You is the name of my podcast on Instagram. And then Kid Onyx is the name of my business that's also on Instagram.
Can you explain
and Facebook.
A little bit about Kid Onyx?
So yeah, I created Kid Onyx because I'm a therapist. I work primarily in like Compton and South Central, and I get a lot of Black kids, and I have to teach them the language of emotions. And a lot of the emotion cards, it didn't have them on it. And I was just like looking, I'm like, okay, emotion cards for Black kids, emotion cards, but could not find nothing. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna make one for this client. That's how it started. I was like, oh, I'm gonna make these for this client. And then my parents saw it. They was like, no, Nia, you need to sell this. Like a lot of other clinicians need this, you know, because they don't have the representation here. And like everybody's pushing mental health, but it starts from a young age. You got to teach them how to verbalize what they're feeling. So I came up with that idea, and I've been working on this for over a year. Like, I just put it out in February, but I started it like early last year, the concept and everything. So my goal is just to create more emotional learning tools for Black kids, you know, so they could see themselves in it.
Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
dope. So yeah, go follow Nia.
Yep.
Kayla.
My Instagram is just _KCKAYYCEE. So yeah, y'all can follow me.
Yeah, y'all can follow me. My Instagram is Ms. Danny with 2 N's, DANNI. My business page is _flour, like the ingredient flour, and sugar _ and my website is flourandsugar.store. You can get all of your 3D cakes that look like you, your child, your cousin, or, you know, that good old toy that they like. I also teach classes in Culver City for youths and adult, and we make 3D cakes like sushi and tacos, but everything is a cake. Yeah, so that's me.
Oh, well, thank y'all for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Experiences and stuff. But yeah, so that's that. We're talking all things Black women this month. So make sure you tune in. If you caught the tail end or weren't able to watch this whole episode, go back and watch it. Send it to somebody. Yeah, that's it. We're at the Good News Network, and this is the New Black History Maker Show, and we will be back next Friday at 3:30 p.m.
Without the power of God behind everything I do, I really am completely inadequate.
I'm helping the culture. These guys are part of us as well. You know, these guys are our cousin. I'm helping the culture. I'm pushing the culture forward in another way.
Hey, Black child, be what you can be, learn what you must learn, do what you can do, and tomorrow